talking about how great it is you get close to the king, and if you can kiss the hands of the king, don't kiss the food, and those kind of stuff. Well,
So it was about how much, how can we actually get ourselves into that proximity and measure that through he gave us a few pointers that I think is warranted to go through it. I think there was a few lines that I remember we talked about, and let's see if I can go through the highlights real quick. So okay, where are we? Let's see. So the one thing that we talked about was the fact that words, sound, and speech are struck relentlessly, so I can talk to you without these three. We talked about this as far as, there is a level of enlightenment that, Rumi's talking about, that what we feel we need in order to communicate becomes extremely obsolete. So normally people believe that you communicate through, your senses, or the words or sounds or speech. And in this case, he's talking about getting above the five senses and going beyond that, and perhaps transform into a um, into a higher self of ourselves that can do this, can communicate, and can perhaps get what it needs without these three senses. Sorry, let me just get this right. Oh, sorry. Oh, come on. Sorry. Let me, you guys have to give me a second. As this thing is not cooperating with me. Okay. So that, and okay. All right. So he was talking about words, sound, and speech I strike relentlessly, so I can talk to you without these three. And then, he's using some examples here. And it's interesting because he uses Adam, Abraham, Gabriel, Messiah, and the fact that, there are words, or there are perhaps, there are messages that were communicated, and these messages are beyond our self. It's 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 something that we have to reach our higher self in order to properly consume and understand these messages. And then it says, if I wanted to be somebody, I had to first become a nobody. So I found a person in a nobody. an individual and non-entity. For every king's subservient to his slave, men die for those who for them choose their grave. Then he goes further, and he goes further, and if you remember, he started talking to us about that. He talked about the order of B, which we explained that he's referring to the kun fayakun, or the fact that to be and it becomes, in a sense, so that and in these two lines it says, so all these I's and we's can finally merge in their beloved totally submerge. Bring here the order be, for only you transcend all speech and all our wishes too. And then he says, a heart that's bound by joy and misery does not deserve to see you properly. So the joy and misery that he's talking about in here is the fact that the joy and misery are feelings and understandings of ourself. So it's my ego or myself that feels joy, and it's my ego and myself that feels misery. If I am sad about something, majority of the time it's because of what has happened to the self that I can, I'm accustomed to, which is driven by our mind and our feelings and our touches and our five senses. So every time that, he wants us to actually be free out of that as well. And it's like, let's unbound the heart from the joy and misery so that you can see things properly. In this case, you can at least, get to that level of realization into your higher self. It's different, very rare and valuable. Don't say it can't be. God is capable. He then, gave us a promise. And in this case, he's like, I get it that it's different. I get it that it's rare. And I get it that you realize that if you can achieve this, this is going to be very valuable. But never come back to say that it can't be done, because God is capable. It is something that, has been promised, and God is capable of doing this. God, good, evil, joy, and grief are transient states which die and leave to God all their estates. So basically, a transient state, he's trying to describe it that, again, it's something that we feel and we realize it with our own, self and ego. And that self and ego is something that prevents us from, realizing God within us. I was listening to a book by Wayne Dyer and over the weekend, and it's called Wishes Fulfilled. In case any of you guys are interested, I like Wayne Dyer a lot. I think he is one of those fortunate folks who, in the path that he chose, he was greatly guided, because as I have to say that I've been listening to him for the past, let's say 10, 12 years. That's probably when I first got to know him, was 12 years ago. Okay. And so ever since 12 years ago, I've listened to multiple books that he has multiple times. The funny part is that every time I listen, because I think I'm becoming more familiar. It's not that I'm becoming, more advanced in my spiritual life. No, I'm just more familiar with the science of it. So I'm getting these words because I keep repeating them. I guess, unfortunate to further, kind of, memorize this. I mean, I'm still not fully entangled with my heart so that my heart could actually properly see this. So as I hear him, it's interesting that, he's got a way of, you know, uh, understanding the concepts that Rumi has been portraying in all of his his poems. So he in this book that I was listening to, one of the things that he talks about is yourself and your higher self. And the funny part is, in order for you to actually get your higher self, the first thing that you have to do is first you have to break yourself. So in order to break yourself, you have to go through pain. And as you go through pain, the pain is going to, kind of, get you to fully, realize the experience that you have had and the experience that you wish that you want to have. And then, eventually you transcend from that into a next level and level after and all that stuff. So having said this, I want to go back to this line which says, good, evil, joy, and grief are transient states which die and leave to God all their estates. So basically, these are feelings that we have because we are so ingrained in ourself. As you are still ingrained in yourself, you have these feelings, and these feelings, give you, certain joy or pain, whereas you need to get rid of them. And in order to get rid of them, you have to get rid of the self. Now, if you remember, there was another thing that we talked about, and that was that compared with ours, wine has no strength at all. Compared with our expansions, heaven's small. All wine gets drunk through us, not us through it. Our form lives for us, not the opposite. And again, it's the whole thing about, we are, I just gave the example that if you pour a glass of wine on a piece of rock, the rock doesn't become drunk. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even sense what you have poured on it. So the drunkenness that we feel, we're the one who give that drunkenness to the wine, not the wine. So the source of everything is us. And if you remember, when it comes to, again, just to, if you follow how Rumi, maps this, our origin being from God, and God having, given each of us his own breath. So therefore, when it comes down to our existence and how we manifest what we experience, is something that we give it energy and we give it that power. So therefore, that energy and power is something that, we get through what's happening in us again. So all wine gets drunk through us, not us through it. Our form lives for us, not the opposite. We're bees, our bodies like the honeycomb, since through our soul we have built home after home. Then, we went back into the, the story of the merchant and the parrot. And basically, if you remember, by this time, the parrot has fallen dead after the merchant gave her the message. And in a sense, not the message, but he just told them that this is what happened when I was in India. This is what I experienced. So any questions? This was just a quick review of what we went through last time. All right.
Just the name of the book you read from Wayne Dyer's. I read most of the book, but I have not heard that book yet. What is the
Called
name?
Wishes Fulfilled.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. So the merchant flings the parrot out of the cage and the dead bird flies away. So he emptied out the cage just like a cup. The parrot fell out, but then flew straight up. The dead bird soared just like the solar ray that rises in the east to start each day. This left him dumbstruck. He could not see how. Amazed, he sensed the parrot's secret now. He looked up, asked her, "Parrot, won't you wait, like the nightingale, explain our present state?" So he's now wondering what happened. How did this, all of a sudden, I thought you were dead. Now, you flew away. So what happened to you? Or what was this experience? So he starts questioning it. He says, is that Indian parrot's way you have learned to trick and roast me till my heart is burned? So it's like, what was it that the Indian parrot taught you? So the parrot answers and says, yes, through her actions, she showed me how to give up my voice and loyalty to you. Since it's my voice for which I've been confined, she acted dead to bring this to my mind. So she's basically saying, yes, that's the case. What happened was that she showed me how to actually be dead. And that's how I acted dead. So therefore I could be free. To say, sweet singing bird, pretend like me, just make yourself look dead and you'll be free. And so basically that's the message, right? Now Rumi goes to actually explain this for us, and he says, so if you are a seed, you're feed for every chick. If you are a bud, you'll just what children pick. So now he's talking about the I think the concept that I think in all cultures, one way or another, we see, and that's, when they say an evil eye or a bad eye or an evil wish, in a sense that, how we say knock on wood in English, or in, other cultures, there's all sorts of, ways to somehow get the evil eye away or something like that. So he's bringing that in here, because he does believe that, every word and every deed has energy towards it, and these energies does affect people. So he says, if you're a seed, so he's like, be careful how you bring yourself about into people's eyes. If you're a seed, you are a feed for every chick. People will take advantage of you. If you're a bud, you'll just what children pick. So hide the seed and be a snare instead. Change buds to roof straw. Change buds to roof straw there above your head. So he's like, try to actually, in a sense, hide your what you think that in other people's eyes could be as of envy. Try to hide it from them. Let's put it this way: is like, try not to display as much of what you know or what you do in people's eyes. Those unaware that spring is for rebirth cannot perceive what time is really worth. Now, one of the things that he's now trying to get, I gotta I got to explain it in other ways. So this translation sometimes, gives us, a very bad, bad understanding um, of of the poem. Oh, sorry, I missed a couple of lines here. So whoever actions off his own best trait will soon be sent the worst of luck by fate. So you auction it off, not action, auction it off, auction off what your trade is, and eventually, there is a bad luck that might, come around you. Evil eye rages, jealousies begin. Evil eyes rages, jealousies begin to pour on him like water from his skin. And envious enemies tear him into two. Friends steal his life from him. I swear it's true. Basically, he's trying to tell us that, and this is an interesting concept because we are very much in today's society, we are very, very much driven by our fame or our image. And, the number of likes or the number of followers or the number of, people that we, are, saying hello to us, or how many, texts you get in a day or something like that. And these are just the senses that are driving these desires are tricking us. And Rumi is trying to tell us that these desires that we are kind of getting accustomed to, and nowadays we're even, our lives are being shaped by it in a sense, are not a true essence of what you're worth. Because Rumi believes that what you are worth is something that comes from within you, not from outside of you. And we're programmed to look outside rather than to look within ourselves. So he's like, try to be happy from within yourself rather than from outside of yourself. And the moment, as much as you want people to like you, you have to like yourself. That's why, these days in modern psychology, one of the things that, you hear people say a lot is like, you have to first love yourself. Well, the reason you have to love yourself is because the moment you love yourself, you just really you don't need anybody else's love. But we first, look after, that other, and we don't care about our own self. And in this case, it's not the ego that we have to love, it's our inner essence, that essence that God put in us the day that we were born. So those unaware that spring is for rebirth cannot perceive what time is really worth. So he's like, people who don't understand that, this life is a cycle, they also don't understand what a gift they're given at the moment. Because we always, that this is something that we always say, we're like, we cruise through good times, right? You always say, oh my God, the good times pass by so quickly, but the bad times are lingering around. Well, the reality is, from a time perspective, they are both the same time. But the fact of the matter is that when it's a bad time, we forget that the bad time is also a gift, not a bad deed and not a bad outcome. So it's to take refuge in God's grace, and you will know that he pours kindness down on us below. And this is important for us to remember. God is pouring kindness on us. Imagine one of the true issues that we are having right now is that we can't get together in the ways that we used to get together a year ago, even, right? That was God's kindness. It's interesting. I was watching a video today about somebody who was deaf until he was 30, and through some procedure he was able to hear a sound. And the statement that he made, which struck me the most, was the fact that once I could hear, and of course you have to understand his speech was, obviously he's going through therapy and his speech is not as clear, but you could actually make sense of it and you could understand it. I mean, he was doing pretty good. It's like, when it became the New Year time, I decided to pick up the phone and call everyone. And it's like, the interesting part is that nobody wants to talk these days. They all want to text. Think about that. Think about how we have become. We are given a gift that we can talk and we can listen. And we are not utilizing that. We don't even look at it as a gift. We think it's just something that has to be there. So he pours kindness down on us below. Why seek another refuge from your plight? For you both fire and water now will fight. Moses and Noah's refuge was the sea, which showed its anger to the enemy. And fire protected Abraham as well. Smoke rose from Nimrod's heart as if from hell. The mountain beckoned John the Baptist near. Its rock made his pursuers run in fear. It said, "Come and escape now with your life. You're safe in me from every sharpened knife." So it's a big deal. If you guys have to look at it, it's really I think this is something that you guys have to. I would urge you guys always to go back and read these lines, but it's important for us to fully understand what does this mean and what is he talking about when he's talking about, how is it that, it's always important for us to figure out, is the source of my pain from outside of me or from inside of me? And most of the time our pains are exerted on us from outside because we are so dependent on what's outside of us rather than what's inside of us. And it's interesting, when you listen to Wayne Dyer, he's talking about God. And the concept of God to him is, he has fully understood that the statement, "I am who I am," is a godlike statement, not a statement of the ego. Because the only way that you can actually be is when you are with God. Because in order to be, that means that you need to have a continuum. And in order for you to have a continuum, you have to be with something that actually does have a continuum. And God is the only essence that does have continuum. And through that continuum, it can, we also exist. So we become eternal when we realize God within us. That's important. You have to realize God within yourself. All right. So the parrot says farewell to the merchant and flies away. The parrot gave him words to contemplate, then said farewell. We now must separate. The merchant said, God be with you each day, now that you have shown me a more worthy way. He said then to himself, that's the merchant, I've understood to take the path of all the wise and good. How can my soul be less than that mere bird's? The soul must follow good ways, heed her words. Okay. All right. So Now, Rumi decides that he's going to give us a little bit more, explanation on, why is it that it's not good to be famous or, be a celebrity in a way. And all of us remember this. This is, majority of children, when they grow up, their whole thing is about becoming a celebrity. People love being on stage. They just do. And the more you have, people clapping or cheering for you, the better, I guess the stage is, and, the better they feel. I have known people who, when they've been on a stage, and if the audience was not as, what they perceive they should be, they have left. And they're like, this is not worth my time. And to them, it's a matter of time, what my time is and how much my time is worth. And therefore, you guys are not worth my time. Therefore, I leave. And it's interesting. These are all the calls of the ego. The ego calls these out, and people just follow the direction. It's amazing. So it says the harm in being.
Just a question before we.
Sure.
So in the previous page, so we have the bird. The parrot says, he tricked the owner or the king, this guy, the merchant, and he flies away. And the parallel, so the idea is that, it's about like evil eye. I mean, that was the lesson that we just talked about. It's about evil eye and concealing something good so that, you're not showing off and incurring all this envy from people. Mm-hmm. But I was looking at this parrot as being like the part of the merchant. So they're like the same person somehow. And like the parrot's like the soul or something like that of the merchant. And now the end of the story puts them at odds with each other. So,
well, yeah, I see. Okay.
And one other thing, just before you answer that, is so I'm also the parallel in the last 14, the last part where Rumi talks about Moses and Noah and the fire and the water and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm trying to draw a parallel between what just happened to the parrot to these things, if that's the right connection.
Okay, I see. All right. So remember, the parrot was caged originally. So so I think one of the things that I think it's best not to do is to actually get the parrot and the merchant and superimpose on top of each other. I think there is definitely a distinction here. A merchant right now here is look at him as a soul which is completely lost and doesn't understand how to be free. The parrot is a soul who wants to be free, but doesn't know how. Okay, now, in this case, the one who's being caged, the reason he's being caged is because he looks pretty or she looks pretty and she sings well. So because you look pretty and you sing well, you are caged. Remember, he told us something about in a previous story as well, that every king is a slave to his own people. And the reason he is slave to his own people is because he wants to remain a king. So therefore, he needs to actually do something that his people are happy about. If they become unhappy, he's no longer going to stay a king. So in this case, I mean, that's just some kind of a metaphorical example, in a sense that in order for you, so as long as you are connected to everything that's happening outside of yourself, you're a slave to that. I mean, I'm a slave to my job, right? Because I want to keep my job. And in order for me to keep my job, I have to make sure that my colleagues and my, employees are happy. Now, in this case, if I know one of them is going a bad path, these days, of course, you have to be very careful how to actually, you give feedback, and, there's all sorts of sensitivity issues and everything. And that's all great. It's just that it has made this so much egocentric that you have to be very careful not to actually hurt anybody's ego. And the moment that you actually hurt somebody's ego, the egos go out and start a war. Because that ego goes and tries to look for protection, whereas your ego actually goes and start looking for protection, and then they start, kind of fighting. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
that is basically the essence of our today world, right? Now, having said all that, when he's talking about, us, or he's bringing out the examples of Moses and Noah, and he's like, you have to have trust in the fact that if you decide that you will live beyond your ego, you live beyond yourself. So it's about yourself and your higher self. If you want to elevate your higher self and you want to live by that means, you have to first have that appreciation for the fact that there is a protector who is going to protect you no matter what. And that's why he's given the example of Noah and Moses and Abraham, because in all these three examples there was danger that was threatening them, but then there was a protector who was, completely in a place, whereas, okay, I'll take care of you no matter what. Now, having said that, what he's right now trying to, take home with us is the fact that we all want to get to happiness. And he knows this. He knows that we all want to be happy. He's actually trying to describe the long-lasting happiness. And the long-lasting happiness is for you, in order for us to actually achieve that, we need to free our souls. That is how we're going to achieve that long-lasting happiness.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Oh yeah. So the parrot then learned how to be free from his cage from the message from India, from that other parrot in India. And the merchant is still caged.
He is still caged, yeah, because again, if you remember, this is what he says here. He said then to himself, this himself is the merchant. I've understood. Now I got it. So it also goes back to that whole story of muto qabla an tamutu, or die before you die. So in order to be free, you need to die. You need to experience, that death before you die. That comes from Hazrat, Ali. Is one of his, khutbahs, and that, he says this, that you got to die before you die. And Rumi many times is going to use that example. And the dying that he's talking about is like, in order for you to get rid of all these, look, I mean, honest to God, think about how many times in the day you become happy and you become sad. How many times you smile and how many times you become concerned. Many times. I mean, you drive, somebody stops short in front of you, you get pissed off. If you actually catch two stoplights that, all of a sudden are at yellow and you can pass them, you're like, oh yeah, today's my day. Think about that.
Yeah.
How we actually, think like, oh my God, this is a good day or a bad day. And Rumi is like, if you cut all these things that somehow define what a good or bad day or what a good or bad experience is for you, if you try to cut them all and live with what the essence of that is, then hey, you're all good.
So in this case, the parrot literally died before he died.
Exactly. He
Yeah.
literally showed or at least pretended he died
Yeah.
before he died. Yeah.
Got it.
In the eyes of the merchant, he looked like he was a dead bird. So he let him go.
A quick question. This verse that you just mentioned, die before you die, what's the source of it? Is it from the Quran or something else?
No, I think it's so there's a book called Nahjul Balagha, which is the khutbahs of Imam Ali,
Okay, got it.
his Friday prayers, and I think it's in one of those. I can find the exact source of it and get back to you on that. But it's muto qabla an tamuto. So die before you die. So, all right. Are we good, Mateen?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so now he comes back and he's like, all right, let's talk about this cage that you live in. So it's like your cage-like body is the spirit's thorn, fed by this sight from those you come upon. One says, and it's interesting, these are things that, try to give you a good feel for what's worth. One say, I'll be your confidant, my friend. Another says, I'm your partner till the end. The next, no one can ever take your place to match your beauty, virtue, and sheer grace. I mean, we've heard this from people who have come and gone in our lives. Another says, both worlds belong to you, and all our souls feed off your great soul too. When he sees people drunk with him, he'll lose all self-control. For self-conceit, he'll choose. So basically, these things that we are fed basically feeds our self and our ego. And we're like, oh yeah, I must be the shit. And then all of a sudden, when one of them is not there anymore, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what happened to me? You lose all your senses, all your happiness is all of a sudden gone because one of them just got caught. Not realizing thousands like him sitting through in a stream where they can't swim. So he's like, you have to realize that 1,000 people just like yourself were thrown into this stream and you could not swim. You couldn't swim. The world gives flattery which men desire. Eat less, for it's a morsel full of fire. The world that he's talking about is that, this life that we live is constantly giving us all these flattering stuff that we are like, it feeds us and it feeds our ego and it feeds our self. And he's like, try not to eat so much of it. Don't eat so much of it. It's fires unseen. So the stuff, these flatteries are fires and you can't see it. Its taste, though, you can tell. And then its smoke will rise as if from hell. So he's like, you can taste it for sure. And it's temporary. And eventually the fire will eventually bring out, the smoke that it's the smoke of hell within yourself. Okay. So don't say I'll never be so gullible. And it's interesting that he uses the word gullible here. So yeah, we always say that, oh, don't worry about me. I won't be that gullible. He's like, you all will fall into it. Don't say, I'll never be so gullible. Through your desire, you're always vulnerable. And the desire that he's talking about is, again, the desire that comes from our ego, our self. Our self desire is what actually instigates all these feelings. And should one mock you in the public's gaze, your heart will burn with shame for several days. Now, imagine that you have been so gullible, you've liked all these praises, and one day somebody just mocks you. It happens. They do. And then all of a sudden, what happens to you? Your heart will burn with shame for several days. Although you know he speaks from disappointment, that his high hopes did not find their fulfillment. Now, whoever just decided to mock you, all of a sudden, obviously they were a little disappointed with whatever they had seen and what they had, felt that, you should have delivered to them. Still, its effect will linger inside you. The same applies when you hear praises too. It's like, well, the effect is the same. And every time you hear a praise, it's the same way. Again, the effect. And the reason he says the effects are the same is because all these things are coming from outside. So if somebody mocks you, that feeling of getting mocked is not permanent. And if somebody praises you, that feeling is not permanent either. What's permanent is actually if all comes from within yourself. And that's what he's trying to get us to do. In order to get there, we have to cut ties with what's outside. And this effect will slowly take its course to be your arrogance and error's source. The praise falls like sweets. We all stay blind. They're known through bitterness they leave behind. So it's like, the praises that you get is like the sweets that you can get. So if you have sweets, you love the sweets, right? And even back then, I don't think if they knew about diabetes, but they knew that, having too much sweet is gonna, result in some sort of an illness. So he's kind of referring to that here. He says, just like a potion or a pill you take, then suffer irritation for its sake. So he's like, whatever you take, because it's coming from outside, no matter what happens, you're going to suffer its irritation. Eat sweets, then feel the taste soon disappear. Like, okay, when you eat the sweets, now remember, the bitterness is always lasting longer. It's just like that. It is the way it is. If you eat something that's bitter, the taste will stay with you for a longer time. If you take something that's sweet, the taste just goes away very quickly. It is just the way it is. I haven't really figured it out from a scientific perspective why it happens, but I actually put it on the same, concept or explanation as, hey, you've got a, what do you call it? When you're having a lot of fun, the time passes by, and when you're actually miserable, the time just goes extremely slowly. So it says, eat sweet, then feel the taste soon disappear. Short-term effects can't last. This should be clear, but they still take effect, though far from view. All things through opposites are shown to you. So he's like, you have to understand that, the effects of them will show themselves. And the way they show themselves, it also is because this is the world of opposites. And the opposites are going to just manifest and unfold in front of your eyes. Sugar's effect persists far from your eyes. To form boils, nurses then have to excise. So boils is type of a cut or a bruise that happens because you eat too much sweet. So it's like, you have to understand that you may not see what happens to you immediately when you actually eat too much sweet, but eventually you'll see it through some sort of a bruise or a cut. The self becomes like Pharaoh. with such praise. So now he's going back to the self. It's like the self is always is like Pharaoh with such praise. Be self at best. Don't choose that tyrant's ways. So he's now telling us that try to control the self. To be self at best is basically, try to control it, trying to, contain it in a sense, and don't choose that tyrant ways. Strive to be like slaves and not like kings. Be struck like balls. Don't be the bat which swings. He's using the bat and the ball in here, whereas in the poem itself, he's using the ball and the polo stick. Doesn't matter. The polo stick, the reason he likes to use that is because the ball on the ground keeps rolling, and each hit, it rolls into a different direction. So Rumi wants us to be like the ball on a polo field. And as we get struck in different directions, he wants us to roll. He doesn't want us to resist. He wants us to roll with what has struck us. So it says, be struck like ball, don't be the bat which swings. Or else, when all your beauty fades from view, your sycophants will then grow tired of you. So the sycophants in here are, people who you have befriended you when you actually had something to offer. So in this case, when you have money, certain people gather around you. Those are your sycophants. And it's like when all your beauty fades away from you, your sycophants will then grow tired of you. They're not coming around you anymore because you don't have that same beauty that they could enjoy, or you don't have the money that they could enjoy. That group who falsely praised you will be found calling you devil when you come around. So next time when you go around them, they not only are not friends with you, they call you a devil. On seeing you arrive, such men will say, a corpse has risen from the grave today. So they not only are not going to praise your beauty, they're going to compare you to a corpse, like dead man walking in a sense. Just like the beardless youth whom they call Lord, to trap him with deceit when they applaud. So he's using an example which, in the old days, pedophiles, if they wanted to lure a kid, they would basically try to applaud the kid first. And that's how they would lure them into, whatever evil deed they had. But when his beard, so in this case, he's talking about the beardless youth. And then he says, when his beard grows with his infamy, veiled demons will feel shame at what they see. So it's like they only want him because of his purity. But then after that, when he grows up, they don't want him anymore. The devil seeks a human he can curse. He doesn't come to you, for you're much worse. So he's basically telling us that if we are driven by our ego and we're driven by our five senses, we're worse than being cursed by the devil or Satan. While you were human, he would still come up. He's like, remember, if you were human, the devil would still come around you. The Satan would come around you and offer you his evil drinking cup. But now you're like a devil through and through. You're good for nothing. Satan flees from you. So he's like, in this case, he's not even going to stick around. He's going to run away from you because he's done what he had to do. And in this case, remember, Satan is a metaphor. The Satan that he's talking about is Satan that's within us. we enable him. And once we enable him, we are then, once we are on our way that he wanted, in this case, it's our ego, and every ego-driven thought and every ego-driven action that we persist and we are used to and we are completely accustomed to just basically makes ego to be less and less active. It's like, well, you're on autopilot. Why should I even try anymore? You're doing what I want you to do. The moment we decide that we want to change, the moment we decide that we want to actually get rid of ourself and go to a higher self, that's when again the evil starts, and it just starts, with the desires and so forth, and it keeps on coming on us. The ones who used to hold on your helm, flee from what you've become. You're worse than that. Okay. So in this case, it's talking about those friends that you used to have. It's like, in this case, they're all going away from you because you're not even like them. You're worse than that. Okay. Any questions? All right. You guys are listening too much, which is good. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's just that, when you listen too much and, when I look at Sonny as he's like, on that couch, I wonder, what that couch is doing to him. So, if he has a blanket on as well, then I would be like, very So, Sonny, you don't have a blanket on, do you?
No, I assure you, not yet.
All right. Okay. So, now the next section is explanation of what God wills happens. So, we've talked about God willing. If you remember at the very beginning of Masnavi, one of the things that Rumi brought for us was that in Masnavi, there was the word of inshallah, or God willing. And if you remember, the doctors who actually appeared at the slave girl who was sick, they were so sure of themselves that they're going to cure her. However, Rumi told us that because they were so sure of themselves, they failed because they forgot to say God willing. Now, in this section, he's talking about the fact that everything that happens in our lives is because of God. It is God's will. And I know for some of you, it's very difficult to understand this. I mean, and again, it's just a very difficult concept to grasp. But I challenge ourselves in a sense that, hey, look at it from perspective of the fact that how much control do we think we have in our daily lives? And I'm gonna challenge you about that. Like, how much control do you really think you have? Because the control that you have on your life is a perception. Your life, whether you like it or not, is going to go on. Whether you're here or not, it's going to go on. The only way you can actually live in a harmonious way is if you actually have alignment and balance. And those are the two things that actually allow you to have a, fairly comfortable and happy life if you actually align yourself with what life wants. Now, combine that with the fact that now we're thinking about cutting anything that from outside is affecting us, whether it's happiness or sadness. That is when you actually start taking control of your life. if you become neutral to what's happening to you, if you take away what affects you and allow yourself to be, and just, cut all those, hooks that brings happiness or sadness, and start from within yourself, just like how a wine, it gets its essence from itself, from its own self. Get it from your own self, break your ego, and reach out and reach to that higher self. So let's see what he says. Explanation of what God wills happen. What we have said is a basis, not the end. But for God's favors were worth naught, my friend, without God's grace and that of his elite. Angels would earn a blot record sheet. So in this case, it's like, if God didn't want things to happen, even angels would have a hard time, passing as angels, in a sense, or passing the litmus test. Oh God, whose grace fulfills our every need, remembering someone else is a misdeed. So think about it. Every need that we have, it's God who's fulfilling that. You have a need of breath. You have a need of food. You have a need of, temperature and all that. Everything is given to us by what God has created. For so much guidance you have bestowed on us, it hides our flaws and other wretchedness. We have flaws. We do misdeeds. And one of the characteristics of, Rumi believes that one of the characteristics of God is that he would never bring this forth into our life, or he would never bring it forth so that we would be ashamed. He sees it, but he still continues to give us all his gifts. The drop of knowledge which you gave before, unite now with your ocean, please, once more. So the drop of knowledge that he's talking about in here, the drop of knowledge. Remember, every time that we're looking at how we were created, remember, we were created from the essence of God being, blown into us. And with that, we got a drop of knowledge. And this knowledge is the eternal knowledge that is connected with God. So it's like, you're the one who gave us that. If we connect with him, we connect to that eternal knowledge. If we don't connect to that, we are, left with what's limited in us and what we can perceive with our brain and on our mind. So he says, the drop of knowledge which you gave before, unite now with your ocean, because that's endless. Please, once more, the drop of knowledge in my soul, please, free from lust and from my body's tyranny. Before the soil should soak it deep inside, before the wind should spray it far and wide. Though if they snatch it, you'd be capable to take it back, for it's redeemable. So it's like, no matter what happens to me, I know you're the one who is able to redeem things for me if people snatch it away from me. Where is it? Though if they snatch it, you'd be capable to take it back for its redeemable. The drop which spilled or vanished in the air to flee your power, how could it thus dare? It's like nothing is out of your reach or nothing is out of your sight. You cannot, get away from your power. Nobody can get away from your power. Though it should enter deepest non-existence, when you call, it will run back through the distance. So whatever happens to us, whatever happens to the smallest matter, he says that when God calls it, it will come back to its origin, which means that it would all come back to God. Opposites kill each other just like men, but your decree can make them live again. Now, remember, Rumi is telling us that this is the world of opposites. Okay. So the fact of the matter is that in the world of opposites, we're able to comprehend what is manifesting before our eyes. The fact that you can actually feel something is because there is an opposite sense that can sense it. Unless you know heat, you don't know cold, or unless you know warm, you don't know, cold. So these things are opposites. That's why you can get to comprehend and feel it. From nothing to existence, Lord, you can each moment send another caravan. So every moment, if you remember, one of the things that Rumi says is that at every instance, this world is renewing itself. I don't know if you've thought about that statement. I want you guys to think about it. Right now, you guys cannot go back to even a minute from now. You guys cannot go back to the moment where I actually, told Sunny that is there a blanket on you or not. You can't recreate that. You may be able to watch it on a video, but you can never recreate it. You cannot manifest it again. So at each instance, the life that we have is a birth. It's a rebirth. It's interesting. One of the things that we don't think about is this. Our cells are constantly multiplying themselves. I mean, if you want to look at it scientifically, and some people may have a scientific mind that, this has to kind of, make sense and comprehend for them. So if you look at it scientifically, at every instance, our cells are dying and reproducing. So the moment, the person that I am right now, I'm different than what I was yesterday, because the amount of cells that died in me and were reproduced as well. So think about that. So this world, Rumi tells us that this world is renewing itself at every moment. And if this thing is happening, why is it that we hold on to what is from the past? It's already dead. It's gone. It's over. So from nothing to existence, Lord, you can each moment send another caravan. Logic and thought each night specially become annihilated in your sea. Every night, he believes that things go deep and just disappear in the ocean of his kingdom. But new truth begins once again at dawn, rise up their heat like fish and are reborn. Now, you know that Rumi believes that we sleep and we rise again. This just happens to us. We sleep and we rise. And he believes that when we sleep, this body that, it's made of clay, or it's made of, the earth, is staying silent and motionless, but our spirit leaves the body and travels and comes back. It just happens. we know that scientifically even they have looked at it, and you know, there are proof around this, you know, that yeah, this does happen, that you know, there's a level of, they're saying that if you want to see how somebody looks like when they're dead, look at them when they're asleep. That's exactly how they look at when they're dead. So it says logic and thought each night especially become annihilate, I can't say this word, annihilated in your sea. But new truth begins once again at dawn. Raise up their heads like fish and are reborn. Thousands of leaves are vanquished every fall into the sea of death, which conquers all. And draped in black, as though he mourns, the crow laments the garden's grass was forced to go. The village chief, however, will dictate to non-existence, give back what you ate. Now, the village chief that he's talking about in here is God. So he's saying, he's trying to tell us that this whole life is on a cycle. It has a birth and it has a death and it has another birth and another death and keeps on going. The circle of life never stops. The village chief, however, will dictate to non-existence, because non-existence in this case is the word, remember we talked about the word Adam, or the nothingness. There's something that's nothing to us, but it exists. So to non-existence, that's what he says, is like, give back what you ate. You have to now let him go. Let's get it back again. Black death gives up what you ate like an ass of plants, medicinal herbs, and leaves and grass. Yes, he used the word ass, and the word ass is, he's talking about just animal, you know, the donkey. Collect your thoughts now. Stop meandering. Each breath within your falls replaced by spring. So it's like, remember, stop thinking through this thing that, you know, try not to think through them as, you know, death and then not seeing it again, or that it's finished and it's done, because there is a spring that's coming forward. Your own heart's garden is so fresh and green. There cypress, rose, and jasmine can be seen. The crowd of leaves now hide the branch from view. The scores of roses hide the palace too. So it's like, you have to understand that there is so much of this rebirth that you don't see what's behind them. So what he's also talking about is that everything that happens in this universe for us happens through an abundance. There's a wish for an abundant amount of gifts that comes to us. So now he says, from universal intellect this came, as rose I don't know what this word is. I bet you, I don't know what this flower is. As a rose and hyacinths, it smells the same. What's the word?
Hyacinth.
Hyacinth. Okay, thank you. It smells the same. Without the rose, can you detect the rose scent? When there is no wine, can you see the wine ferment? Scent is your leader and your perfect guide. to heaven, it will lead you deep inside. So he's now talking about the fact that in order for you to become one with what you're looking for, you have to also be able to smell it. In this case, the scent is what's going to help you. So we're coming back and we're like, okay, how do I smell heaven? How do I smell happiness? Those are the questions, right? And it's like, you have to look into what this smell is taking you towards and go for it. Just like how when you hear the smell of a rose, you know that if you follow that, you're going to get to the roses. Now, again, that is on the physical life, but the smell of something that is coming from the heart or coming from the ego should have a distinct smell. Think about that. As a matter of fact, I want to give you guys a challenge for this week in your jobs or in your communication with people and so forth. If you're having a tough time communicating, if somebody is not understanding what you're saying, just for a moment, just think about whether this thought or this communication is coming from the ego or it's coming from the heart. Think about that. If you can have that detection, if you can be certain about whether this thing is coming from ego or from the heart, and how you respond to that is something that it would put you at the top of your class. Because as you know, it's not the words or things that happen in life that shapes our life. It's the way we respond to them. It's our response that shapes our life. Okay, so just be conscious of it. So scent is a balm for eyes, which give them sight. Jacob's eye opened, darkness turned to light. So again, he's talking about Jacob, and you guys know that story that when Joseph was taken, Jacob went blind, and the moment that he heard the scent of Joseph's shirt, he got his eyesight back. Since you're not Joseph, you're like Jacob and cry. Love's tumult will be seen then in your eye. So if you're not Joseph, and in this case, he's not talking about the Joseph that was good looking, don't go that, because that's the one thing that everybody knows about Joseph. Joseph had many other, traits which we don't look at. So he was a servant of God. He was a true believer. He went through, all sorts of, hardships and, in order to realize what's ego driven and what's heart driven. And eventually he became the Amir of the Egypt, or the king of the Egypt. So in this case, if you're not Joseph, he's saying, be like Jacob. And what does that mean? So if we're about to be like Jacob, what that means is that you are like Jacob in a sense that you desire and you cry for what you want, and God will see that, and God will grant that. Listen to this advice from Masnavi. Find freshness in your withered frame like me. So Masnavi is is another poet which came before Rumi, and he's now giving us an advice from one of his poetry, that it says, listen to this advice from Masnavi. Find freshness in your withered frame like me. Your heirs presume a face like a rose. Since you don't have one, don't strike such a pose. So he's like, you have to understand that if you're striking a pose, and a pose is something that you are showing to others, right? So when you say, hey, you know, give us a pose, and these days, and if you go on Instagram, there's a general pose that it looks like every, you know, millennial girl is, you know, taking, of course. You know, they have the hand here and, you know, things like that. And there is also a pose for guys, I think, you know, regardless. And the pose is something that actually comes from outside, because you are presenting yourself to what's outside. So he's like, remember this, unless you are the rose, don't try to be like one. So a face that's plain turns ugly when it's vain. Even blind eyes should not endure such pain. So in this case, he's saying that when you don't have anything to pose for, and when you don't have any beauty that comes from within yourself that you can actually pose with, that, don't do it, because it looks ugly. So in a sense, think about that. This is not so I remember when I read the Farsi version of it in the Farsi class, and people are like, well, he's being mean, because when he's saying that, you know, everybody is ugly and things, and I'm like, no, that's not the case. This is not what he's trying to say. He's not saying that people are ugly. What he's trying to say is this: find the beauty within yourself. The beauty within yourself is inside you. If you found that, then you don't have to pose for anyone. You just become that rose, and you are it. But unless you found it, don't try to act like one. Makes sense. It's him. I'm not saying it. It's his stuff. A face that's plain turns ugly when it's vain. Each blind eye should not endure such pain. In front of Joseph, don't assume such airs. Like Jacob, sigh in need and say your prayers. So, the parrot's dying. Now, this is the part that he's trying to bring everything together for us. So it says, a parrot's dying showed her neediness. Now make yourself a corpse. Now make yourself a corpse. Feel even less. That Jesus' breath might serve as your cure and make you like itself, so blessed and pure. So basically, he's explaining everything in here, and I think this kind of also answers Matin's question, a little while back, that his dying shows the fact that, he wanted to die from his neediness. He wanted to get out of it. And if it's for us to actually die again so that we can actually get rid of all of that neediness. Don't claim in spring on stone some verdure grows. Be soft like soul to raise a lovely rose. So he's trying to tell us that the moment that we die and we are recreated, if we constantly are in this habit of killing ourselves and reborn and rebirth and kill again and then rebirth and rebirth, is like you take that rigidness out and you become like a soil. And from a soil, that's where a rose actually can grow. So you prepare your heart, or you prepare yourself or your higher self to actually nourish and allow the growth of beautiful thing from within yourself, not from outside. So you have to work with this and keep on hammering through the rigidness that you have created in within yourself. Don't claim in spring on stone some verdure grows. Be soft like soil to raise a lovely rose. For years you have been a stony-hearted man. Try being like the soil now, if you can. And he's telling us that. Yes, Martin.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, that connects it to find freshness in your withered frame like me.
Well, the wooded frame is there. Is the wooded frame even, he's saying that it gets its rigidness from inside.
Well, I think like Rumi's already done this, right? So he's kind of admonishing us.
Yes.
You know. Or no?
Okay. I guess you have to repeat that again.
Oh, I was just saying, like, because like in that part where it says, and find freshness in your withered frame like me, your air, and then it goes and says, if you don't have one, don't strike a pose. Like this being the soil where the rose comes out is an explanation of those verses.
Hold on one second. I just want to be so okay, I didn't caught this. I'll strike that. So the only thing is I don't see that like me part in the Farsi version. So it's like so what he's saying is that listen to his advice from Sanai, find freshness in your withered frame. And it's just basically you look for freshness in there. And then so this like me part has to be stricken out, because it says your heirs presume a face like a rose. Since you don't have one, don't strike a pose. So it's like then you have to first understand where you're all what you're all about. Once you understand what you're all about, then if you are certain that you're a rose, then strike a pose. But if you're not, then you have to keep on breaking down this wooden frame so that it would actually then start growing flowers from within itself. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go to, we'll read a little bit of this story. It's another story about Omar, and it says the story of the old harpist who in Omar's reign would play the harp in the middle of graveyard without any food, just for the sake of God. Now, remember, he's been telling us that this frame doesn't do you any good. Find the freshness within yourself and in your heart. That's where you find the good. The goods are inside you, not outside, basically. And the funny part is nowadays, people spend so much money, crazy money, for the outside, not for the inside. You're talking about Botox and gels and lip filling and cheek filling. And unfortunately, the majority of them are also with women. I mean, that's a, again, a separate story. But I mean, I know guys also do the same thing. And then you've got hair and the nails and the, other stuff and so on and so forth. And then the branding and the clothing and the purses and the shoes and all that. So it's the outside that we spend quite a bit of money for it. And I do that. I cut my hair, I do, some other stuff as well. So we spend money for it. Now, he's trying to tell us how much money are you willing to spend for your inside, for your soul. So there was once Omar, so let's see. Okay, so there was once in Omar's huge caliphate a harpist whose sweet music was so great. His voice made nightingales fall stunned and cry, while also making each joy multiply. His breath graced meetings where the Lords would throng. There's resurrection, listen to his song. The resurrection that he's talking about here is that, how his voice was so beautiful that, he would wake up the dead, basically. Like Israfil, whose voice was heard ahead and brought back souls to bodies of the dead. Or one of Israfil's close friends whose cry could make an elephant grow wings and fly. So he's like, his voice was so crisp and so, rejuvenating that, people could just do extraordinary stuff. For Israfil revives men totally, though they have been rotten for a century. The prophets too have special tones inside, from which to seekers precious life supplied. So now immediately as he's talking about this special tune that he's now saying that, something that we have been promised, by certain religious thoughts, which as we read Rumi, we start, hopefully realizing that some of these are misinterpretation of the Quran. And in this case, it's about how, for instance, in the Quran, we believe that there is a resurrection day, and everyone would get up and would answer to their what they have done and their deeds, and eventually either they go to hell or heaven. I'm just going to tell you, and I'm not going to spend any time on this explaining, but as we read through Rumi has a different explanation and understanding of this event. Okay. I can't hear you if you want to say something.
You're really just going to say that and not explain?
Exactly, because I can do that. Yes. And the reason I say that, and I won't explain it, is because you have to, this is his coursework, and I cannot alter that. But you guys will see how he starts explaining how this works. I'll give you a quick, give you a glimpse. You know that we call the resurrection day Qiyamat, right? It's Qiyamat. And Qiyam in Arabic and Farsi is the word that, when you rise up and you face something, right? That's when you pray, for instance. The very first thing about the prayer is that they say, قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ. You stand up and you face God and you start the prayer. Rumi sees every instance that he stands before God as an instance of Qiyamah. That he stands in front of God and he answers. and he prays and he wants something and he communicates and he has a dialogue and he asks for forgiveness and he tells and admits to what he has done. So in the fifth book, there is a statement that he says that people went to Prophet Muhammad and asked them that, tell us how long is it left until we reach the day of judgment or the Qiyamat, right? And the answer of Prophet Muhammad to them was, how dare you can ask Qiyamat himself, how long is it left until you come? He's like, I am Qiyamat. I am the day of resurrection. And the reason he says that, not because he's just a prophet, is because that when he stands before God, he sees himself there. This is the true, in my opinion, this is the, again, I'll leave you guys to, again, we're going to get there, hopefully together, and you guys will do your own assessment as far as what this really means. But every time you rise up and you face God, you have to answer to him. How are you doing? How did you do? It's like a one-on-one meeting that you have with your boss on a weekly basis or something like that. Same thing. So he says the prophets too have special tunes inside from which the seekers' precious life supplied. The sensual ear can't hear such melodies since it's been tainted by iniquities. Our ear cannot hear everything. We know that because there are certain frequencies that we don't hear. Like, for instance, dog whistles is the best examples of it, that, we don't hear it, but the dog does hear it, okay? And Rumi believes that, there is a divine melody that unless you are one with the universe, you cannot hear it. So the sensual ear can hear such melodies since it's been tainted by iniquities. And man can't hear the angels' tunes inside. Their inner secrets, humans are denied. These tunes are from this world of time and death. The heart's tunes loftier than every breath. Angels and men are captives equally. In ignorance go without a key. Recite community of jinn and men, and learn if you can pass beyond. Go then. So, so he's given us another glimpse into the universe and what we can see and what we can't see. Rumi believes in jinn because this is exactly what has been directly quoted in the Quran as well. And he says that just because you can't see something, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And he says, it says, if you can pass beyond, go then. So in this case, it's saying that the beyond is open to you. You just have to get there. There is a way for you to get there. If you can't find a way, then go for it. Within the saints are soulful melodies which sing, there is one God, so listen, please. Now, this verse is, talking about the people who are believers of law. So he's talking about the La ilaha illallah. And that's why that it says that within the saints are soulful melodies, which sings there is one God. And he's talking about the second part, which it says Allah. But he says that, yeah, they sing that. And he's like, so you have to listen for that melody that keeps on repeating, there is only one God. Lift up your heads from naught, which means negation, and cast off fancies and imagination. You have rotted in this planet of decay. Your soul could not grow up and fly away. If I give just a hint about this song, men's soul would rise from tombs before too long. This is one of the things that you'll see, and we probably have already experienced this, that Rumi at some point, he says that I cannot say more about this. And if I say more, then what's going to happen is that, men's soul would rise from tombs. And it's like, it's as if I would resurrect people. Bring your ear close for this tune. It's hidden, though to relate it now, I'm forbidden. So he's like, if you listen closely, you will hear it yourself. I can't tell you how to hear it, though. I'm not here to tell you how to hear it. Although he's telling us how to prepare ourselves or how to actually take the path towards hearing this melody. This is partly also driven from Greek philosophy, in a sense that Greeks also believe that there is a universe, there is a divine melody in the universe, which if you actually align with that, then you could always, be aligned with creation. So,
so it says, I guess I have some, so this is from the Quran then, right? Recite community of managing. If you cannot pass, go beyond them.
Yes.
And
so it's specifically referring to Surah Ar-Rahman. Okay.
Okay.
So the verse 33, which, is, referring to the fact that it says, Tastati'u tanfuzu. So basically that means that if you can pass beyond, then go.
But is that so that verse, I can't remember if that was in, like, it means you can't go beyond?
You can go beyond. He is saying that you
can go beyond.
You can go beyond.
Rumi's saying you can, but like because is this him saying something at odds with sort of like, I don't want to say orthodoxy, but sort of like the establishment, let's call it.
That's right. Yeah, he's definitely going against establishment. You're right. You're right on that. So it's like, if you listen closely, you can go. But the establishment, of course, says that, that's not possible.
Okay. I'm tempted to just, okay, that's very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your understanding is correct. I'm not disagreeing with it.
And then the when he says lift your heads from la or from not, that's from la ilaha illallah.
So it's like, don't deny it. Lift your head from the law part.
Yeah.
Stay with the illallah. He wants you to stay with illallah, which that is exactly how you are basically connecting yourself to oneness, to Tawheed.
Yeah.
So it's like, take the law out. A lot of people stay at the law. And the law in this case, or the naysayers, are the ones that, no, it's not possible. No, this can't happen. No, it's not in my power. No, I'm not in charge. No, I can't do this, and all that. So it's like, don't stay and get stuck at the law. Stay with the illallah means that if I get attached, if I get connected, all these things are possible.
Right. Okay, and because he also says it like lift your heads from naught, which means negation, and cast off fancies and imagination.
Yes.
So there's sort of like
Okay.
that
Fancy's imagination. Um, he's okay. I'm glad you're saying this now. So I'm gonna so the Rumi, he is using the word vahm, vav hemim, vahm. Vahm means that something that you hallucinate, and it always comes with fear. Okay. So the imagination that he wants, so fancy's imagination should be actually something like cast off your fear imagination, a source that causes fear. It's like cast those things off.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's a word in English that says that, but I know.
No, and the fact that he puts fancies in front of it doesn't help this whole thing. So yeah. I told you guys I'm actually writing emails to this guy and telling him that, there's a few places that he's got to perhaps in his further editions, he's got to correct his, he's done a great job, not to say that he didn't, but some of these, like, in here, like fancy's imagination doesn't make sense, but vah vaheme is fear. It's something that you're worried about.
Maybe like an irrational fear.
So I'm thinking through it from a Farsi perspective, and irrational goes from logic, and it kind of goes into something that doesn't make sense, or something that's physically it's impossible. I can't. It's definitely not vahm. It's not the word that he used in here.
What about delusional hallucination?
Delusional hallucination could be, yeah. Delusional in a way.
So in English, what we call phantom pain, for instance, the equivalent in Urdu is waham. So not necessarily, so doctor would say you have waham. It's not actual pain.
Right.
So illusion, and it has negative connotation to it.
Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, it's similar in synonym, yeah. All right. I'm gonna stop here. We're still not even, he hasn't even started this story yet. I mean, what's up, man? Jeez. But yeah, he's again, it's about this guy who, was an amazing singer. That's so far all we know. And he won't finish it in this section. As a matter of fact, he won't finish it in the other section either. It's gonna take a while for us to get to this story. It's amazing how he does shit. All right. Anything else?
A question. Again, I'm not suggesting we do that, but is it, you think, better if we have, like in Farsi class, we always have a ghazal or something that it is from start to end is, a few minutes, and we can get the concept of that, and then we move to Masnavi. I think this is a little bit sophisticated, even for me, that I read the Farsi. The English part is, I get lost a lot. But I guess if we have something, let's say the first 15, 20 minutes, some related to this, and have a closure on it, and then move to this, I think that's probably.
Well, see, watch the closure part. We can't get
No,
closure
not closure part. Like a ghazal that we finish it.
Yeah,
it's not closure. You're right. Everything is related.
I think it partly is my fault, because finding the right ghazal and the right translation
is hard.
It's it's really difficult. And again, I'm really trying to find, you know, the right stuff. But yeah, your suggestion is valid. So I'll look for it. Hopefully I'll get in the rhythm of it if I find the right source.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting just be ghazal, some like even Wayne Dyer's or something in this kind of concept, something
Sure.
related.
I could probably find a clip of video or something. Yeah. I could find some Wayne Dyer quotes that we could listen and go for. I think that would be helpful. That's a good suggestion. Yeah.
I think the purpose, if I understand correctly what Mr. Mohsen is describing, it's to summarize this long conversation, right?
See, the problem is it won't necessarily summarize this. It would give us clues, but it can never summarize it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the challenge that we're running into.
I think it helps us to understand the concept of
Sure.
or the usage, you know. So
Sure.
Even if Mohsen, even if you like at the end in 2 or 3 sentences, these were the core messages of today, like, or ask
well,
a
I am more lost than any of you guys. So oh, you mean
So
I mean, Sheikh Mohsen.
guys, remember, so I'm really expecting, and when I say expecting, I can't expect anything from you guys. It's not a course that, you know, we grade on curve or whatever. But you need to go back and read these stuff yourself. I'm hoping that I would get questions from the previous, you know, and from previous sessions and so forth. If I can get questions, and you guys know that I actually record these things on YouTube. You guys can also look at it at YouTube again. And if you want to, you know, again, figure out that, you know, this thing actually is something that, you know, again, the explanation is as good as what we've talked about here. I think your questions as you review it again makes this better. It just makes it better. So, but I will try to have some kind of an introduction, you know, some kind of a preface to what is coming up. I'll try my best. I won't promise.
Thank you.
that would be great. Thanks.
All right. Well, have a great night. It was
Thank
great
you.
seeing you guys.
Hasta